Well, I think one of the big issues that is most impactful right now for California's infrastructure is, the conversation around the cap and trade reauthorization. And so that's what we had a rally of the coalition, which is called the Climate Safe Infrastructure Coalition. It's made up of business, labor, local government leaders, transit advocates, and even we're joining more like social justice groups. But let me talk a little bit about the California Alliance for Jobs then, as well, right? And I think that's how we find ourselves, operating around this, the cap and trade reauthorization conversation. I think is also, back to the role of like the history of who the Alliance is. And so the Alliance for Jobs recently just had its 30th anniversary.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was founded as a kind of the first in the nation model of labor and management coming together to create an advocacy arm for the union construction industry. And so the members of the Alliance for Jobs are the Associated General Contractors and United Contractors Associations. And then the Northern California Laborers Union, Operating Engineers Local 3, and the Northern California Carpenters Union. So it's very labor management alignment. And what our job is to go out and really advocate for responsible investments in California's infrastructure. And that has been something that I think has set the organization apart from a lot of different sort of political entities in Sacramento, right? Is like we're it's very like transparent who we are, like why we exist and like what we want, right? Like it's but also we have a compelling story about like what the public benefit that comes from these infrastructure investments.
Oh my gosh. And the good jobs it creates.
Exactly.
Right? The jobs that you can afford a mortgage on. That's kind of how I've heard it described, right? Is that like, these are the kind of things where someone can start a family, they can learn a skill, a trade, be in a long-term career with these types of construction labor jobs.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the best opportunities for, folks with non-traditional education backgrounds or, never found themselves like, on a college path where you can still, have a 6-figure job that provides you, pension and health benefits. And, we call them family supporting jobs, right? The sort of things that, help provide entry point into the middle class and like ultimately creates that sort of economic stability that comes from, having the security of a good job. And so that's why I think these investments, they're measured not just in how much benefit there is to the families that are, working, that have a family member working on these jobs. Increasingly, there's more and more women actually who are entering into these jobs, in part because they are so lucrative as a career opportunity. So that is definitely part of the story of infrastructure.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
Part of who the Alliance for Jobs is.
Yeah, and you get to drive some pretty cool machines too. So, right. Yeah, I like to take my kids out to the Tykert rodeos. Shout out to Tykert. And my kids will be out there driving, D10s or D8s, excavators. And man, these things are like super sophisticated now. I mean, oh my gosh, it's incredible to see the GPS and the technology. I'm sure it's going to be a matter of time before, AI is helping them dig some of these trenches. You know what I mean?
Right. And just the power under those joysticks, like you can be so precise in the application of the machine is, I think part of why they call them operating engineers, right, is they're doing this job that, requires a lot of technical precision.
Yes.
Right. Like, these like massive machines. Yeah.
Right. So they get things down to like 1/10 of a foot.
Yes. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the first time, Joe actually took me to Oakland, and I went into the building where the carpenters are. And I was so blown away by how beautiful like the carpentry was, it, like you should expect it, but when you walk in and you see incredible cabinetry and, offices, I was just like, Man, this is such an incredible skill, and
That's right.
really, really cool stuff. We were talking a little bit about cap and trade, and I think, what is cap and trade? Like, can you explain it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, cap and trade is an offshoot of AB 32, which was passed by the legislature and signed by Governor Schwarzenegger back in 2006. Right. And this was the authorizing legislation that a lot of the state's climate policy has been derived from. And one of the mechanisms of that was the authorization to create this cap and trade program that would essentially freeze the state's carbon emissions, at a percentage of 1990 levels as like this baseline that would be measured on and going into the future. And then we would cap the emissions of, what they started out with was mostly on like what they called stationary polluters, but essentially like companies, power plants,
Right.
cement plants, other
Factory.
industrial sources. Yeah, exactly. And so that, they were fixed location. They knew where they were, and then over time, really, this program also captured all the refineries as a major source of, a carbon emission. And so the cap and trade program, it generates around $4 billion a year,
Wow.
on average. But recently the auctions have been reduced significantly, and there's actually going to be another auction here in August. And so earlier this year, with the Trump administration coming in office, he's directed the Department of Justice, to repeal back, certain laws. And
Yeah.
now he attempted to do something similar during his first term in terms of using federal authority to preempt the state's cap and trade program. But his, that ended up in court, and authorizing legislation is not, as I said, it's based off of AB 32, which, set forth the parameters to create the program. So it's now up for renewal there's 5 years remaining on the existing program. And so that's up for renewal by 2030.
Interesting. Okay. I don't think I knew it was up for renewal. It's one of those things about legislation, and I would say about Washington, nothing's permanent, right? They're like, oh, the tax cuts, we're making them permanent. I mean, for 10 years?
Yeah.
Because that's what that means.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
so did you say it was the Department of Justice that's going after?
I don't know. I think,
Yeah.
well, he direct the Attorney General
Oh, okay.
to go, challenge, I forget but he, in response to that, whatever Trump said, in response to that, the legislative leadership and the governor, came together and announced that they were going to reauthorize the program into the future. And this is part of the reason that the auction revenue had dropped. And so this will be a statement that the, cap and trade program is here to stay.
Good.
And that, it'll be a long-term, regulation that companies will have to comply with.